Greetings and salutations, everybody. I am Rob, aka Robbie Diesel, and we are getting ready to step into the world of the 100-acre wood with the creator and star of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. We have Mr. Scott Chambers. Thank you for joining me so much. And the director, Mr. Reese Frake Waterfield. How are we doing today, gentlemen?
Yeah, very good. Nice to meet you, Rob.
Yeah, we're good, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Fantastic, fantastic. You as well. So I want to jump right into it. And this is for you specifically, Reese. How long did it take you to conceptualize your vision for the first film?
For the first film, oh, that's a good question. About 4 days. I know that's a bit like extremely abnormal. The reason for it is me and Scott kind of make made a lot of films in that year. We were kind of focusing on kind of like the kind of lower budget VOD market.
Mhm.
And initially, when we were creating Winnie the Pooh one, we had no idea of the kind of scale and scope it was going to, and the kind of audience it would reach. So I had a script for it, but there was some technical issues with the script, or like legal issues. Some of the characters in there you weren't able to use, so I kind of had to really quickly write something in less than 1 week from just from a complete blank sheet of paper into a 90-page script in order to have it ready to go and film. Obviously, that's extremely abnormal. We and then yeah, literally about 3 weeks later, we were in production with it, and then 3 months later, it kind of blew up to the scale it did, and we were like, I was a bit like, holy shit, like this is this now needs a bit like a lot more work involved. We obviously on the first one we only had like a budget of 20K for the principal photography, but
Mhm.
a lot of that has now changed for the sequel, because in the sequel we're kind of it was a lot more aware from the outset of the kind of scale and scope it was going to. So a lot has changed in that relative to the first film.
Definitely. And you spoke a little bit about the initial budget for the first film. And the second film obviously has a much higher budget, thankfully, right? How much did having access to a bigger budget or more capital change your approach to how you wanted to tell this story?
Knowing your limitations, your resources is really important to kind of allow your breadth of creativity to expand out, because suddenly there's so much more you can do. In the first film, with such a limited budget, you have to be constrained to certain things. Like if I want a death scene, what do I have access at a kind of site to do those death scenes? So there was a hot tub there, so it's like, okay, we can make one around this. Everyone's got a car, so I could use a car for a death scene. But in the sequel, with the expanded out budget, it's like suddenly the locations are bigger. The people who are going to do the gore and the prosthetics are way more experienced. I can kind of order in any form of weapon I want, and get that kind of custom made. So it really expanded out my ability to do creative and fun deaths in this movie. And in the sequel, that's one of the strongest elements. Like we're massive horror fans, like me and Scott, and death scenes are what everyone loves. They want them to be really good. Winnie the Pooh has a huge bear trap as a weapon, very linking to his character. You've got Jason's got his machete, Freddy's got his hand. I thought, okay, what can I give Winnie the Pooh? He's half bear, so and bear traps look absolutely nasty. So he kills people with a few bear traps. That was expensive to get made, but it looks awesome. We have more characters involved this time. So the prosthetic studio, who have worked on like Voldemort, Mad Eye Moody, Captain America. So they've worked on extremely big blockbuster level stuff. So their gore and their practical effects are absolutely amazing. Their new designs of the creatures are awesome. So Tigger's got claws he can kind of like maul people with. And yeah, it's so much more. There's how many deaths is there in this movie? It's got that 50, is it?
I would say like 50, 60 is a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of death in this movie compared to the first film. So
That is awesome. That is awesome. So I want to stay along the conversation of the deaths. In the original film, there is like all of the deaths are cool, but I zoned in specifically on the very last one where we kind of get to delve into Pooh's psyche, where Christopher Robin is begging him not to, and he goes, "You left."
Yeah.
So will we be exploring even more of that dynamic between Christopher Robinson and Pooh in the, or I'm sorry, Christopher Robbins and Pooh in the sequel?
So the first film has now become a film within a film. So when you watch the sequel, you'll see that the first film, there's a scene where it's actually getting played on the TV, and someone's watching it. So that's why there have been a lot of changes. You've got a new Christopher Robin, like the cast has changed. You've got a new look to the creatures, and that was strategically done so everything could kind of get reinvented and changed. In terms of like the heart to it, like the psyche element of like Pooh and Christopher Robin, that has been enhanced a lot in the sequel. The protagonist of the film now is in the sequel is Christopher Robin, whereas it was a bit more like 50-50, I'd say, in the first one. But ultimately it should be him. You know, that's what he's known for in the books. It's always Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and their relationship, and that's what we've now done in the sequel. So, and
Perfect.
there's some really nice scenes at the end where you dive more into the mind of Pooh.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, I read that there's going to be a possibility of kind of an expanded horror universe featuring some of our most favorite, beloved childhood icons. Is there a dream project for either one of you that you would want to work on next?
So,
Perfect.
Scott, I'll let you carry on with this then.
Okay, so yeah, we've just filmed Bambi, and we're
No
about to shoot
way.
Peter Pan. Yeah, yeah. So Bambi is our version of Cujo. So all of these films, they're kind of like what we're used to as a horror audience, and it's being brought back in our own way. Peter Pan, they're all going to have their own spins. This isn't the dream project, we're getting there, but they're all going
Okay.
to have their own spins, their own tones. So like whatever the director kind of like, whatever their tone is, we're letting them just kind of flesh that out. We're not saying go to a B movie route, go to this route. It's just whatever they're good at, we're letting them kind of flourish from there. With Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, obviously it's a man going in windows and abducting children and saying we're going to go to Neverland. So that's already dark. These are all in the same universe, as is Pinocchio, which we're going to shoot after Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, which leads us to our version of the Avengers, which is going to be called Pooniverse Monsters Assemble. And what it's going to be is it's going to have Winnie the Pooh, Piglet, Rabbit, Tigger, the Mad Hatter, Tinkerbell, Peter Pan, Pinocchio. I'm sure I'm
Bambi.
missing out others because I think there's the Bambi's going to be in it. There's about 12, and they're all going to be in the film together. Some of them won't see eye to eye, so there'll be some versing, but ultimately it's going to be our version, a horror version of the Avengers, inspired by stuff like Freddy vs. Jason, and they're going to be working together to destroy everyone and take over the world.
That
Coming
that
soon.
is fantastic, actually. I'm super excited for that. I think we have time for a couple more questions. I do want to ask, we live now in a world of remakes and reboots and things like that. How important is it for you guys to tell these original stories based on existing properties? Sure, but there's original stories at large here.
Mm. Yeah, we get it's nice that you've said that because we get a lot of criticism from people going, "Oh, this is so unoriginal." But to us, it's actually almost the exact opposite. It's like I know it's based on an IP, but it's something unique with that IP. Like it's a unique interpretation of it. There are so many films which are just repeating the same thing. You know, you're at the seventh installment or eighth installment of a certain monster, and nothing's really changing about them. It's just the same thing repeat. Whereas with what we're doing, every time there's something tweaking and changing. Like these Winnie the Pooh, like Winnie the Pooh 2, we've got more friends in there in this one, 4 instead of 2. In the third one, we're going to have even more. Scott's view of Peter Pan is extremely dark. It's never been done before, like as dark as he's going to do. Bambi, there's never been a Bambi horror film. So we've got this like IP element, which helps it gets its audience, but with those that IP, we're trying to do something really inventive and something different. And that's really crucial to us because yeah, it just at times it feels like horror's getting a little bit stale. And we love seeing stuff which is just crazy and it's just different.
Yeah,
And
and
I'm a
but
huge
also
yeah.
jumping in there, Reese, with what you're saying, these will not be PG-13 films. Like we want to make these real horror films, like for
Yeah.
fans. Me and Reese are fans, and like there's horror villains that just we haven't seen them for so long. Freddy, Jason, like these films, they've kind of, we all love
80s
them, but
horror.
obviously they've not been able to make. Yeah, we've not been able to make new ones of them, and Freddy is our version of Tigger, and we're trying to bring Jason back via Pooh, and giving them our own sprinkles. But and then also like imagine a world where Scream, Freddy, Jason, all of them were in a film together. That's what we're trying to do. We're
Yeah.
trying to make these films for people that truly love horror.
And that's the other thing is like the studio system feels like it's against gore a lot of the time and R-rated stuff, especially lately. And whenever they're doing a horror film, it feels like it's going down a bit more of a PG kind of route. And it was such a really nice breath of fresh air kind of for us to see films like Terrifier 2 come out. I love Art the Clown. I loved what they did with it. I'm super excited for what they're doing with number 3. And that's a similar kind of direction with what we want to do with our stuff. We want to take it dark. We want to take it gory. We don't want to be constrained to thinking, okay, we have to remove all of the gore and do off-screen deaths because it needs to fit for an audience of 13-year-olds or 15-year-olds or so.
Yeah, and I myself am a big fan of the OG movie. I think we got time for one more, maybe. So I do want to ask this really quickly. The first film was kind of critically panned, but was commercially successful. What do you think that says to the way that critics enjoy movies versus the audiences?
So yeah, with the first film, it's very interesting. If you look on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got 3%, and the audience score is 50%, hugely different. And we know a lot of people who really do like the first film. I think some of the difficulties in the first film is it's not all budget because I don't want that to seem like an excuse. It's like but there are limitations, and ultimately everything is getting viewed at the same sort of scale. That is getting compared to films of 10 million or 15 million or 200 million in some other cases. So there is this disconnect. I feel like critics often just don't like horror. Like it seems to be very common across the board. Like me and Scott always say, like we look at a horror film we love, and it's like very rarely, even like the greats, like horror films from the 80s, 90s, or the last 30 or 40 years, which are famous in the community. Some of them are just critically disliked, and it's like, but they're like some of the leaders of the genre, really. So we think there is this kind of disconnect. The sequel, I'm actually pretty positive about. Like, I think it's gonna score well in both areas, though, because it's not just something the first film lacked a bit relative to the second was story. There's a lot more story involved in the sequel compared to the first, and we have a lot of very good aspects which I think critics will like, such as working with Matt. Like Matt's last film did really well, and me and him worked on a long time on the story for this one. We've also got some extremely good performances in this film, like from the likes of Scott and like Simon Callow, Alec Newman, and people like that. So performances are strong, story's strong, and that's what they care about a lot of the time. But that's not taken away from the gore and the horror either. They're very, very strong as well. So I'm very confident in the sequel, and I'm really excited for people to see it in a couple of weeks.
Awesome. I myself am also very excited. Reese, Scott, thank you so much for your time today. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. When does it drop officially?
So in the US, the first date's going to be the 26th of March, and then that will run until the 28th of March through Fathom Events.
Beautiful. So you guys make sure you get out there, get your tickets, support the project. Scott, Reese, I appreciate you guys so very much. Much continued success to you. And I am very looking forward to the next slate of projects from you.
Awesome. Thanks so
Oh,
much.
thanks so much for your time.